Ethics. Okay, so it has been over 2 months since we've had a homework assignment. And the only homework assignment we're going to have is the same one we had last time, which is, but on chapter 2 instead of chapter 1 of a.k.a. Avos. So you are going to find a translation of a.k.a. Avos chapter 2. I'm posting the Chabad.org one. And I like the R-Scroll one better, but Chabad.org is fine. You can find it in most Sidurim after Mincha of Shabbos. Read through the entire chapter in English, and then select a Mishnah that interests you. Fill out the Google form to the best of your ability, where you're basically just going to ask questions on it and then explain why you chose it. Oops, sorry. And that's the assignment. Okay, should not be that difficult. And it's going to be due on Friday. Only reason it's due on Friday is because I need to know which Mishnayos interested you so I can start preparing them over the weekend. Okay, shouldn't take you more than like 15 minutes, 10 minutes. All right, any questions on that? I think it's fairly straightforward. Okay, so we are going to do one more topic, at least in chapter 1. And this is a topic that I feel like someone asked a question that was related to, but it was a long time ago, so I don't remember who asked the question. And it's one that is arguably, I don't know if ethics is the right way to characterize it, but because I found a person who addresses it in Jewish ethics, then we're gonna do it here. Okay, the topic is picking and choosing in halacha. Okay, or if you've heard people use the phrase shopping around for a posek, okay, like finding someone who's going to give you the answer that you want. So before we even start any of the text here, okay, what is your understanding, your view? What have you heard about the Torah's attitude to picking and choosing in halacha?
I think that it's not okay to do, but if someone has extenuating circumstances, then a rabbi may be able to give them a psal, depending on every situation.
Okay, good. So that is definitely, I think that's definitely fairly unanimous. Okay, I think that's a accurate perception. But then the question is not okay to do in what sense, right? Disapproved of, but why and what is the nature of that disapproval? So anyone else hear anything else or have any other thoughts on it? Either, again, not something necessarily stuff that you've learned, just even subjective impressions or personal ideas.
I mean, I feel like there's two types of picking and choosing. There's picking and choosing to have less, and there's picking and choosing to have more.
Okay, good. That's another good distinction, right? And I feel like which one has the better reputation?
Picking and choosing to have more. Exactly,
right? Okay, is being machmir seems like people are okay with, of choosing a stricter opinion, but then being makil, being more lenient than people are not so okay with. So what do you think? I mean, this may be an obvious question, but what do you think is the reasoning behind that, or the premise behind that?
They're worried about they're worried about people breaking down barriers and to eventually actually break halacha.
Right. Okay, good. So the looking down on being more lenient is rooted in this idea that you might come to violate halacha. Okay. Is there any other source of objection to that, or is there any other reason why people favor being more machmir?
Because then when you're more lenient, it's easier to become too lenient in a sense. So if you're more machmir, it's harder to become so lenient.
Okay, good. So whether this is an actual slippery slope or a slippery slope fallacy, people definitely use that reasoning, is that once you start being more lenient, you're going to end up becoming too lenient, and it's a lot easier to go in that direction. Whereas if you go in the other direction, you're erring on the side of caution. Okay. What about, okay, can anyone make a counter argument? Okay, aside from what Ayala Fader mentioned about in extenuating circumstances, an argument for why there shouldn't be a problem in picking and choosing in halacha or shopping for a posek?
Because maybe it's better than disregarding halacha completely.
Okay, so number one is, if you're faced with the alternative of either shop for a posek or be lenient versus not keeping halacha at all, certainly seems to be better than that. Okay, that's a good argument.
Also, you're not qualified to make halachic decisions on your own, so it's kind of better to just pick and choose based on a posek than to pick and choose based on your own assumption.
Okay, good, right. So that's an important distinction here, right? Which is, when we say picking and choosing, we don't mean you try and figure stuff out on your own. That clearly everyone's going to hold is bad because you don't know what you're doing, you know. But picking and choosing between two poskim, I mean, if they're a posek, then they know what they're doing, and like, what's wrong with relying on one versus the other? Like, you know, so why should that be bad? Okay, good. All right, so this is getting our feet wet, and I don't know if this is gonna be a 1 day topic or 2 day topic, but let's just dive in and see where it takes us. So this is a Mishnah, still in chapter 1, Mishnah 16. Okay, so on the source sheet, I bolded the first part because we're only going to do the first part. Okay, who wants to try to read and translate this one? Some of the words are not easy to translate, but we're not asking you to be perfect. We're just asking you to try. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Rabbi Gamliel, Haga Omer, Rabbi Gamliel would say, Asela Charav, do for yourself a lot. But his
Okay, so this is, I think you made the same translation error last time of Rav is not a lot here. Rav is.
Oh, you're Rav.
Yeah, so, and how do you say asay? Now that you know what it means. Say again?
Oh.
Asay lecha Rav.
Do.
So what's the sentence?
Oh, the whole, okay. Do for your Rav.
Nope. Anyone else want to try?
Establish for yourself.
Okay, good. Establish yourself. Okay, so instead of do, what's the other translation of asay? Make. So make for yourself, make a rabbi for yourself. Okay, or make, like I said, that's a good interpretation, right? As establish, right? But make a rabbi for yourself is the literal translation. Okay. All right, next.
Okay, v'stalik min hasafek, and does that mean distance yourself? I don't think it does.
It's close. It's very close to distance yourself. Anyone know what lisalek is or siluk?
Divide?
No, it might have come up in kashrus stuff that you've learned.
Is it a beat? Oh no, that's salak, not.
Oh, that's a silty, right? That's funny. That's right. We did that in Gemara. So siluk is remove, okay, and histalek means what?
Right, remove for yourself.
Not even remove for yourself, but
From yourself.
Not even from yourself.
Remove.
No. Remove yourself. Histalek. Remove yourself. Min hasafek. From
the doubt.
From the doubt. Okay, good. And now this is the part that's hard to translate. Val tarbe, here it's Rav. So don't increase for yourself or be excessive in la'aser amados. Now, la'aser you might get as a verb.
To make rich.
That's la'asher. What noun does this remind you of la'aser is a verb? What noun does it remind you of? La'aser. Or what's the shoresh?
10? Like eser?
Yes, 10, right? Okay. So what noun? I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with tzedakah. What noun do you associate to? That has the word eser in it.
Meiser.
Meiser, right? Okay. Yes. So la'aser means to give ma'aser, okay, or to tithe. That's the English one. In tithing estimations, we're not going to go into what this is. Okay. I also didn't even look at the Mefarshim. We're just going to focus on the first half. Okay. So make for yourself a rabbi and remove yourself from doubt. Okay. What are the questions or problems on just that phrase?
How would making like establishing a rabbi remove all doubt from you?
Okay, good. So let's just say this first a basic question. I kind of like prejudiced it in my own translation, which is why you're asking this, but is there all right, let's say, what is the relationship between the first two clauses? Okay. Is it saying that making a rabbi for yourself will remove you from doubt? If so, how? Okay. Or is it saying something else? Okay. What else?
What does it mean to make for yourself Rav, and what does it mean to remove doubt? It's
a weird phrase here. Okay. What does it mean to asay lecha Rav? What would you expect it to say instead of saying make a rabbi for yourself? What would be a more normal way to say like
find a rabbi?
Yeah, why doesn't it say like find a rabbi or what else?
Follow a rabbi.
follow a rabbi, right? Or choose. Okay, right? Make is a little weird. And then also, yeah. So what was the question on remove yourself from doubt? Like what specific question? We already asked what the connection is between the two, and we what definition?
What doubt?
Yeah, what doubt? Okay, good. So what type of doubt is this talking about? And then how? And then we said, yeah, what does it mean to remove yourself from doubt? Okay, good. I think those are the basic questions here. Other than the question of like, what do they all have to do with each other? All right. So in the interest of just in case this is I actually like to jump right into the Mefarshim here. Okay. All right. So anyone want to try reading and translating this one? This is a little bit more difficult, but I believe in you. Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Okay, Asay l'charav, make for yourself a rabbi. Afal pi shamro, even though it says harotze la'asot kedivrei beit Shammai oseh, those who want to do like the house of Shammai should do it or do it.
Okay, good.
Kedivrei beit Hillel oseh, and like the words of Hillel, you can do.
Okay, good. So just on your own, pause for 1 second. Question for everyone. So what is it? What is it saying? What does it sound like this Gemara is saying that he's quoting?
That they pretty. You go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
Like it seems to say that you could pick and choose.
Yeah, it seems to say you could pick and choose, right? And we know that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai had a lot of machlokes. So Sforno is saying, even though it says this, which means that he's going to disagree with it. Okay. Oh, but sorry, not disagree. Yeah, go ahead, Ayala.
Oh, because it says like both of these are the living words of God.
Yeah, good. Right. So because it says these and these are the words of the living God. Now pause here for 1 second. Also, show of hands. Just how many of you have heard that expression before? Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. I don't know if this is one that is like quoted a lot. Yeah. So your understanding, what's your understanding of like what that means or in what situations it's quoted? If you have an understanding of it, I don't know if you've heard it explained.
I feel like it's more like my wife is bad. Like as like kavod when like someone starts off saying something.
Interesting. It definitely, I think it definitely reflects kavod, but I don't think that's typically when it's used, when people like invoke it or quote it.
Like I hear it when they like praise the words of Hashem and like the Torah, like and they'll use.
Oh, really interesting. That's I have not heard it in that context.
I've heard it like like where there's like a machloket or something.
Yeah.
Or like different opinions, and they're like, oh,
exactly. So it is most often quoted when it comes to a machlokus, and people will say both sides, and they'll say Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim, and like what's the intent that they're getting across when they say that about a machlokus?
That none of them are like wrong.
Yeah, none of them are wrong, right? Both of them are saying the words of God, even though they're disagreeing, right? So Sforno's constructing an argument here. He is. What English move is Sforno pulling here? It's something that you're all encouraged to do in all your essays.
They say.
Yeah, he's doing a they say, and he's addressing the naysayer, right? He's saying, even though the Gemara says that you can follow Beis Hillel or Beis Shammai because these are the words of the living God, meaning both opinions are correct. Now he's going to give his argument. Go ahead, Ayala.
In any case, it's fitting that you make for yourself like a specific individual rav.
Okay, good. Exactly. Yeah. And you can translate that as specific, designated, unique, special. But yeah, pick a rav basically.
You should forever do according to his hora, like teaching.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And hora, by the way, hora literally means teaching. You were correct in that. In halachic literature, hora is synonymous with what we call psak. Okay. Like a more hora is someone who gives psak. So you should always follow his psak.
Uvazet tistalik, and in this you should remove from
Yep.
yourself. Wait, not from yourself.
Not from yourself. Yeah, remove yourself.
Yeah, remove yourself. Min hasavik shal machloket, from the doubt of arguments or disagreements.
Yeah, good.
Be'ofen shelo yitav libecha, because or so that your heart won't be good.
Okay, yate is from it's a conjugation of nata.
Oh, stray.
To stray, yeah, stray or deviate or incline or turn. Okay, good.
Sorry, this message is blocking my.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Lasso lefamim kedivrei zet, to do sometimes like this, ufamim
Yep.
kedivrei zet, and sometimes like that.
Okay, good.
She al kimo ze'amru, that like upon something like this, it says the ha kasiel be'chosha chalich, the fool walks in darkness.
Okay, good. Okay, so I think he's answering all of our questions. Okay, which is what's the relationship between making yourself a Rav and removing yourself from doubt? What kind of doubt? What does it mean to make yourself a Rav? And we didn't ask the question why. Okay, like why is it important to remove yourself from doubt? So what does it sound like he's saying that this is telling you about picking and choosing in halacha? If you had to like translate this into a question, into an answer to the question, like what's the deal with picking and choosing in halacha? What does it sound like he's saying?
That you should not do it, and you should just make one set rub, so that way you're not like ever in doubt.
Okay, good. But most importantly though, why is he saying that you shouldn't? Okay, so obviously you're right. He's saying that so you shouldn't be in doubt, right? But what is he saying is the alternative, and why is that bad? In other words, it sounds like the alternative is doubt, but he's saying that there's another bad consequence other than just doubt.
Like if you don't choose someone who's consistent, you can kind of fall. You won't ever like improve because you're never forced to conflict with your desires.
That's the key. Okay, so the key here is be'oven shelo yiyate libecha lasos lif'amim k'divrei zeh ul'amim k'divrei zeh. So if you didn't have a Rav, okay, and let's say you just had all the opinions of the poskim here, okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to end up just doing whichever one you like. All right. And what's wrong with that?
What you like isn't always what's best.
Okay, what you like isn't always what's best. But I'll just to give a counter argument, play devil's advocate here. He said elu be'elu divrei Elokim chaim, and we know that it's true that like let's say Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, both of them are considered legit opinions. So it's not like you're violating halacha. Right? So like you're following a legitimate halachic opinion. Like in other words, let's say with a doctor, right? With a doctor, we don't say elu divrei Elokim chaim, right? If this doctor says that that you need surgery and the other one says you don't, like it's very rare that both of them are right. Okay, like but here in halacha, then we say that both of them are legitimate. So what would be wrong with doing whatever you wanted and following? I'm not doing whatever you wanted, but following whichever one you wanted.
That you're gonna like just look for a Rav just to justify what you already believe. You're not gonna look for a Rav
and what's
that you
wrong with
trust.
that? And what's wrong with that?
It's like a backhanded way of doing halacha because you're just gonna go after your emotions. If you feel like you want to do something, you'll find a Rav that agrees with you.
Exactly, right. So in other words, what's wrong with it is, and actually, Elisheva said it correctly. Let me just actually take one step back. According to the Sforno, is picking and choosing in halacha a problem in the derech ha'am or in the derech ha'yachid?
Seems like derech ha'yachid.
Seems like derech ha'yachid. So in the derech ha'am, in terms of just following regular halacha, yeah, picking and choosing is totally fine as long as you're picking and choosing between legitimate poskim. However, like Elisheva said, if you follow halacha this way and you just basically, whenever you have any machlokus, you just search for something that is in line with your emotions. So you're technically following halacha, but what you're actually doing is it's just like you said, a backhanded way of just doing whatever emotionally you like. Okay, and that kind of defeats one of the major purposes of halacha. Okay, in other words, we know that all the mitzvahs have a purpose, at least one purpose, usually many purposes. So each mitzvah is benefiting you. But what is one of the benefits that all of halacha has in common is that you're subordinating your own emotions to a system. And you're saying, I am going to follow the system, even if it conflicts with my emotions, you know? And if you just pick and choose whichever opinion you like, first of all, you're probably going to be able to find halakhic opinions that justify lots of things. And you're just going to basically be sidestepping that whole benefit. And you're just going to be following whatever like you desire and not really supporting yourself to halacha. So even though technically you're fine doing that, it's going to be bad for your own development and perfection, because you're just going to be like abandoning yourself into the hands of your emotion and just like keeping the technical halacha. Okay.
But
Also,
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, Ayala, this time.
I see how like sometimes it is like a lesser level, but the fact that you're keeping mitzvot, like you're picking and choosing within things which conflict your desires, but
Yeah.
mitzvot in general may conflict your desires, even if you're picking and choosing. Like both choices may conflict
Okay.
your desires.
So now you're making a counter argument to the counter argument, okay, which is that even though a person who's doing whatever their heart desires within halacha is in a certain sense abandoning themselves to their emotions, the very fact is you're never going to be able to eat pork, right? You're never going to be able to steal. So you're going to be restraining your emotions in a certain way, right? Mitzvos themselves will restrain your emotions. So that is definitely true, right? So we're not saying that you're going to lose out on all benefits. It's just that you are going to lose out on a significant benefit that the day-to-day halakhic practice gives you, you know? But you're right. We can't go to the other extreme and say you're not going to get any benefit. Okay, good. Leah, what were you going to say?
yeah, I was gonna say also picking and choosing kind of goes against, well, at least like my understanding of the elu ve'elu, because the only reason why, like we say, both of these are like the words of God is this posek came to with his understanding through like logic and reasoning, and
Right.
by picking and choosing, you're kind of, and like that's how Masorah works. Like
Right.
we don't know for sure if they came to like the perfect answer, but like because they came to it through reasoning, we accept it. And then
Okay,
by
good.
picking and choosing, you're basically choosing lines of reasoning when that's not really how Masorah is supposed to work.
Okay, so this is actually something that this is why I included the English on the source sheet. Okay, for hoping someone would ask the question that Leah just asked. Okay, but before we go there, I want to actually take a few steps back and say, based on this, I think we can explain what Ayala Fader said at the very beginning, which is why do we make exceptions for extenuating circumstances? Like, what allows us to do that?
There are like holes.
Can you explain what you mean?
Like there's room for leniencies. Like not everything is black and white, and that's why you can find things that
Okay,
more.
can you explain that in terms that the Sforno is using, and in terms of the idea as we explain it, like show how it fits into what the Sforno is saying? Not necessarily you, but anyone.
Because although he's saying that it is better to do this, and there are still different opinions, which are both okay.
Exactly.
Like,
so yeah.
Derech HaYachid would be to only follow one opinion always, but in like circumstances where you can't, or it's really hard to, and it's going to cause you to like really mess you up, then it's fine.
Okay, good. That's exactly it. And I think, and this is the main reason I wanted to do this topic, because I think we all get exposed to this idea that we don't pick and choose in halacha. But then the question is, well, then why is it sometimes okay? You know, and Sforno really clarifies, no, in terms of the actual halakhic system, as long as you're picking and choosing between halakhic opinions, like legitimate halakhic opinions, it is elu divrei Elokim chaim. The problem is that's a very bad standard to set, because then it'll lead people just doing what they want. But now, in circumstances where it really does matter, we do fall back on elu divrei Elokim chaim. Like, let's say, for example, what is one like value that is invoked sometimes to give lenient psak? Like, I mean, there's several answers to this, but like, what's one thing like, oh, we're going to make an exception because of blank? Like, what are some common blanks?
Is it 8 lots of Hashem?
Okay, 8 lots of Hashem is definitely one that's sometimes made, but that's also not very common. Like that, you're not going to get you're going to get 8 lots of Hashem in terms of decisions for Klal Yisrael as a whole. You're not going to get your shul rabbi saying, well, 8 lots of Hashem, like go for it, you know? But yeah, I'm glad that you're familiar with that concept though. Yeah, what's more common?
I forgot the Hebrew term, but life or death.
Okay, so life or death is, I was wondering if someone was going to say that. Life or death is not even a case. I mean, maybe you're right. Life and death, it could be a case where we say you can be lenient, but it's really not that. Life and death, you actually have, it's actually a mitzvah to violate halacha in matters of life and death, you know? So I'd say that that's similar, but a different cause here.
Is there like a significant monetary loss? Like any like
Okay, good.
Shabbos?
Significant monetary loss is one example I was thinking of. The other is shalom bias, okay, or shalom in general, darche shalom, you know? So there are many cases where because the Torah values the money and property of Jews, or because the Torah values shalom, then we will rely on lenient opinions when either of those two things would be violated, you know? And again, if you thought that picking and choosing in halacha was like a halachic thing, it doesn't make sense why we just suddenly like make exceptions. But if it's a derech hayachid thing, then it makes much more sense why we make exceptions here. And then it also explains the other thing that someone else brought up at the beginning of our discussion, which is like, let's say you have a choice. So this is talking for derech hayachid. So if you have a choice between picking a rav and sticking to that rav, or picking and choosing, obviously it's better to pick one rav. But let's say the choice is between a Jew who will either pick and choose or a Jew who would just not keep halacha. Obviously, picking and choosing is better, you know, because there the entire relationship to the derech ha'am is at stake, you know. So that's another thing that I do think that there is a, like, let's say, for example, you know, let's say someone is a Baal Tshuva and they're coming to Judaism, you know. So I think it's still good advice to tell that person, pick a rav and stick to that rav no matter what. But let's say that's going to be too overwhelming for that person, you know. And let's say like they'll form a better relationship with halacha by like picking and choosing. I think there's a good argument to make that maybe for that person at that stage, then picking and choosing is going to be better, because then at least they're like in the halachic system, you know. And the only question would be like, you know, how long are they going to be keeping that, you know, or you know, can they mature past that? Or is it going to affect the community in a bad way? Because that's another thing, is like, you can recognize why it would be very bad. Imagine this. In a world before the printing press, okay, how would you be able to pick and choose? Like what would that process look like? If you, let's say you said you wanted to pick and choose, what would you have to do?
Literally go to the rabbi.
Literally go to multiple rabbis and ask them, or be knowledgeable enough yourself to like do that, okay? But in this world that we live in, what can people do?
Just Google something and then
Google something,
article
right?
they like.
Exactly, right? And you could find any opinion you want online. So that's why I think nowadays it is especially important to stress the fact that we don't want people picking and choosing, because now it's not just a threat to the individual, it's a threat to the entire Jewish community, that if it became the norm for people to not ask rabbis and for people just Google stuff, and as we know, you can't just like believe whatever you find on the internet, okay? And even if you find things that are quoted accurately, doesn't mean that you're going to analyze them accurately. So it becomes a big problem for the Jewish community to just like have people, you know, lay people researching on their own and like coming to conclusions, just following whatever they want. So I think there's an additional factor now, which wasn't even present in the time that the Sforno wrote this, you know? Okay. So now let's get to Leah's thing, which is really, what do we mean by elu v'elu devrei Elokim chaim? Okay. Or what do we mean when we say that like each opinion is legitimate? Okay. So have you ever heard of the story of the ovens of Achnai, the Achnai ovens? Yeah. That's a look of recognition. Does that mean that you did this in Rabbi Chait's Gemara class or in my class? Or you just heard it? Anyone else heard it? Okay, so I thought I put a picture of it here. Hold on, just give me 1 second. Did I put the picture elsewhere? Huh, I had a picture. Actually, let me open a different PowerPoint for 1 second. Okay, so the background is like this. Hold on. Oopsies, hold on. Am I? Oh, I am sharing. What am I sharing? Hold on. Let me reshare everything. Okay, this will be better. Okay, can you see the picture of the outline? Okay, good. So this, I don't know if this is accurate because I found it on the internet. But I found it in a good source. So the laws of Tuma and Tahara in the time of the Beis Hamikdash were extremely complicated, so complicated that the Rambam says that not even the Nevi'im, like not even all the Nevi'im understood all the details. And a lot of it has to do with specific types of structures, whether they're houses or vessels or tools, and whether they become tameh or tahor if certain things come in contact with them. So this was this oven, this coiled oven. I don't know why they call it the Achnai oven. I think Achnai was a region or a place. And there was a machlokas about whether a certain case happened and whether these ovens would be tameh or tahor. Okay, so let me show you now the Gemara. Okay, so just one second. So the Gemara, oops, went too far. So the Gemara says like this: it was taught there, if he cut it into segments and placed sand between each segment, Rabbi Eliezer declared it tahor, and the rabbis declared it tameh. Okay, so classic machlokas. You almost always have a machlokas between one person and all the rest of the rabbis. So here, Rabbi Eliezer saying pure, saying tahor, and the rabbi saying it's tameh. Okay. It was taught on that day. Rabbi Eliezer responded to every objection in the world. Okay, so like they raised all their questions and he responded, but they didn't accept his position from him. He said to them, if the halacha is like me, this carob tree will prove it. The carob tree was uprooted from its place 100 cubits, and some say 400 cubits. Okay, meaning like a miracle happened and the carob tree like went whoop and then like went and then moved 100 or 400 cubits. Okay, and they said we don't bring a proof from carob tree. Okay, which means fine, nice that this miracle happened, but it doesn't prove anything. Okay. Again, he said to them, if the halacha is like me, this stream of water will prove it. The stream of water flowed backwards. Okay, another miracle. They said to him, we don't bring proof from a stream of water. Again, he said to them, if the halacha is like me, the walls of the base midrash will prove it. The walls of the base midrash leaned to fall. Okay, very risky here. Rabbi Yehoshua rebuked them. He said to them, if Talmidei Chachamim are vanquishing each other in halacha, who do you think you are? Consequently, they didn't fall due to the honor of Rabbi Yehoshua, and they also didn't straighten up due to the Rabbi Eliezer, and they are still standing today. Okay, fine. So like the wall, the miracle, the walls miraculously were going to fall. And he said to them, if the halacha is like me, a voice from heaven will prove. A voice went forth from heaven and proclaimed, how can you even compare next to Rabbi Eliezer? For the halacha is like him in all disputed matters. Rabbi Eliezer stood on his feet and said, lo b'shamayim hi, the Torah is not in heaven. Okay, famous line. I mean, it's a line from the Chumash, but he was quoting it, saying that basically, I don't care if God himself says that Rabbi Eliezer is correct. That's not how we poskin. And so I'm going to ignore the voice from heaven. So what does it mean by not in heaven? Rabbi Yirmiyah said, since the Torah was already given from Sinai, we don't pay attention to a heavenly voice, for it was already written at Mount Sinai in the Torah, you shall follow the majority in a dispute. And this was the Sanhedrin, and the majority was against him, right? So we don't go according to that. Rabbi Nassan encountered Eliyahu Hanavi, classic. Okay, and he said to him, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do at that moment? He said to him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu laughed and said, my children have defeated me, my children have defeated me. Okay, so the question is, what is the moral of the story, or what is the point of the story here? And I don't think this is one of the midrashim where every single detail matters. Okay, I don't think there's a difference between the carob and the stream. I'm sure some Mefarshim will say that there is, but what's the general point of the story here?
How like it doesn't change. Once it's decreed, it's decreed, and you listen to
okay. It doesn't change based on what though?
One person.
Right. So how do we paskin halacha?
Based on majority and like our intellects.
Yeah. Okay. Back then.
Even
So
if
back
it's
then
right.
it was based on the majority, right? And the way that the majority did it was based on the intellect. Loose a summary of how it went back then, right? Is let's say this case came up, all the rabbis of the Sanhedrin would make their arguments and they would discuss with each other and then they would vote on it, right? So in this case, Rabbi Eliezer, who again was the greatest genius, okay? And again, that's what always happened is that there will always be one genius. It's always a machlokes, Rabbi Akiva against all the other chachamim, Rabbi Meir against all the other chachamim, Rabbi Eliezer against all the other chachamim. Genius has his opinion and everyone else has their opinions. And he responded to all their opinions, but they still thought that theirs made more sense. They took a vote, and it came out in the favor of them as the majority. Of their opinions were the majority, and at that point, it doesn't matter whether God Himself poskins it, because what did God tell us to do? He told us to follow the processes of Masorah. Okay, and the process of Masorah back then was based on a majority of the vote of the Sanhedrin, and the process of Masorah now is each posek does all the research, looks at all the relevant sources, is familiar with the methods of psak, and then arrives at their conclusion based on weighing all of the evidence. Okay, we don't have true like psak for all of Klal Yisrael that we did back then, like we did back then, where it was one psak from the Sanhedrin for everybody. We have individual poskim arriving at their opinion. So in science, okay, in science, let's use our doctor analogy, right? What does it mean? Let's say you have two doctors arguing about whether something is an allergic reaction or whether it is a disease. What does it mean to say that one doctor's words are true and the other ones are false? What does truth mean in science or medicine?
In line with reality.
In line with reality, right? But so when we say that this doctor's words are true, it means that his idea, his perception of the situation and his analysis is in line with the underlying condition. But in halacha, what does it mean when we say that both words are true? Because it doesn't mean in line with what God said, because that's what this midrash is trying to refute. So what does it mean that the halacha, both positions are true?
Both rationally like come about.
Okay.
Like thought about a lot and like came to that conclusion.
Exactly, right? So the way I would say it is like this, is in halacha, truth means that your position is in line with halachic data, okay, meaning all of the relevant halachic evidence, and rational analysis, which both means like free of logical mistakes and also means in line with the halachic methods of analysis, okay? And that's what it means that it is true or the words of the living God. So if let's say, for example, a layperson who's not familiar with the Gemara looked up all the sources and then just came to their own conclusion, that would not be true because they're not using like the methods of halachic analysis. Or let's say like you had some foreign method like the Karaites or the Reform Jews who look at all the things and they have their own methods of or Korach, you know. So that would also not be true because even though they're looking at the right data, they're not using the right methods of halachic analysis, you know. Or let's say someone poskin, but it was based on a factual error, like back when they thought that, lice spontaneously generated, you know, or let's say like in medicine, let's say like, let's say, I don't know if this is true, but let's say like Rav Moshe poskin on a lot of medical issues. Let's say like he poskin on something. Let's say we find out that in the 60s, then they thought that something was true and now we know that it's not. So that would be a mistake and that would also not be a valid psak. Okay. So Leah, you mentioned that choosing the words of poskim are not a valid method of psak. Like if you were to like look up the words of a posek and choose between this one and that one, that is not a valid method of psak. Okay.
Well, I wasn't saying it wasn't valid.
You weren't saying it wasn't valid.
I was saying it kind of goes against the whole Elu Divrei Elokim Chaim.
Okay, so it goes against Elu Divrei Elokim Chaim from this perspective of the chooser, because he himself or she herself are not evaluating the reasons on their own. But it is in line with Elu Divrei Elokim Chaim in the sense that each of the positions that they're choosing between is valid. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, both of them are valid, but when you choose, you're not saying that a line of reasoning was established and we follow that line of reasoning.
Right. I like how you're using line of reasoning. That terminology is, I think, got into your head from English. But yeah. So this actually happens to be a machlokas, okay, which is, I've heard Talmidei Chachamim who I respect say that opening up a Mishnah Brura and following it is not psak. Okay. That's not like what the Mishnah Brura intended. And even the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, the Shulchan Aruch, who we all treat his words as psak, he never wrote the Shulchan Aruch. The Rav Yosef Karo never wrote it as psak. His main work was the Beis Yosef, which is a commentary on the Torah, which was intended to take you through all the analysis and summaries of like the Rishonim, so that you would like come to your own conclusions. And the Shulchan Aruch was just a summary of his conclusions, but then people started treating his words as psak. Okay, so that's on the one hand. You have people saying that like, for me to open up the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Brura and rely on that, that's not valid, you know. But then you have people like the Rambam, who he wrote the Mishnah Torah to be used as a book of psak, and his intent was you open up the Mishnah Torah, and he says basically, either I will give you the law or I'll give you the principles through which you can answer any question you have without much analysis. So he in turn intended his book to be a standalone halakhic guide that you could just rely on, even if you're not a Talmid Chacham, you know. And so that actually is a machlokas among the poskim. And there were people in the Rambam's era and afterwards who objected to the Rambam for doing that. They said, how can you possibly poskin based on the Mishnah Torah without learning all the Gemaras? And then there's the Rambam himself who said, I wrote it so that you don't need the Gemaras, So like it's a machlokas. And how do you define? How do you choose which side of that machlokas to follow? This is also why you need a Rav, and this really gets us back to our original point of getting yourself out of suffix is very important when it comes to taking action. When it comes to beliefs, or when it comes to ideas, let's say like a chumash, machlokas in chumash. There's no urgency to get yourself out of machlokas. Like let's say like the Ramban makes sense and Rashi makes sense. There's no urgency you have to pick a side, but when it comes to your practice, you do need to pick a side, and having a Rav will get you out of machlokas in a way where you're not going to just be catering to whatever side you pick, So that's why it is good advice. And this is an example of derech hayachid, which I think is relevant for all of us, that we've done derech hayachid stuff, which is like for people on a very high level. This is derech hayachid that is related to every Jew, but it still is derech hayachid, and that's another reason I wanted to teach this particular Mishnah. Any questions on this? Okay, I guess this is a one-day topic. I'm going to make a decision, an executive decision, since we're missing Nach on Thursday because of the post-Hanukkah celebration thing. I need to figure out, do we want to do something in Jewish ethics tomorrow, or do we want to do 2 days of Eov? Okay, and I'll make that decision tomorrow, depending on how big the next unit in Eov is. All righty. All right, have a good day. Let's stop here for today. All right, have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thank you.